Hey guys, my guest tonight, Maren Muter, and I will be talking about UFOs and other great stuff. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing? Well, it's kind of nighttime for people over the East Coast. We're still kind of in the afternoon here in California. It's 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and nice day before it heats up, because it is going to be miserable in another day. Because we're hitting it right now. Today was at 86. That was really cool, really nice day. But it changes. Everything's going to change, and by Wednesday we will be up at 100, 105. I hate it, every second of it. But my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be here. Nonetheless, I'll still be here. So my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We're 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you do have an issue, we can get to you. But, word of caution, it might take us a couple days, because California is this huge state. You know, when a lot of people think about this state, they think about California girls on the beaches and all that, and it's like that. It's like Hawaii in a lot of ways, you know, because we do have that. We have the beaches. Except in Northern California. Well, we have beaches in Northern Cal, but there's not a lot of bikinis out there. Too cold. Plus the water's freezing. But down in Southern Cal, Santa Cruz, boom, all that area, yeah, you get that whole thing. Anyway, so the issue is, if we can't get to you right away, we do have psychics, I hate to say psychic, mediums on staff, who can call you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on in your house or business. And in most cases, they will calm the energy down until we can get out there to help you guys, to help you with it. So that's kind of a plus. But we do definitely get out there. It doesn't take us more than 2 to 3 days to do a turnaround to get out someplace. That being said, if you're watching on Facebook, and a lot of you are, please feel free to follow. If you like what you see tonight and here, please feel free to follow, because we're always looking for followers. And show me some love. Show me a thumbs up. Show me this heart thing that people do. Show me happy faces. Okay? Please do that. I really appreciate it. Also, YouTube, same thing. Okay? YouTube, if you haven't signed up to subscribe, feel free to do that. If you go over to YouTube and you look over our YouTube page, we have more than 950 videos over there, all of this show. Okay? I'm a journalist, photojournalist, and I hate doing the same types of shows every night. So you'll see me varied a lot. I also do other shows. Like, I will do shows on spousal abuse. I will do shows on murders. I will do shows on health matters. So, yeah, feel free to. I'm just looking at the names coming in. Feel free, feel free to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Feel free to peruse all and then take a look at the YouTube page. You know, I'm starting to put things in categories because it's so confusing. And I mean, even I go in there and my mind goes, it's just a big pop sound because it's just so much there. So I'm trying to put things into categories. If you're into Psychic Nancy Matz, she's a medium Nancy Matz. She's got her own folder. This show will be in its own folder. We got our cryptids in their own folder, etc., etc., etc. So that's how it works. And what that does, and same thing, same rules apply. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, happy face, heart, whatever. Because what happens is that puts us up in what they call the FYP. And for people that don't know what that is, it's the For You page. That's what it is. So Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and all these other streaming places and social media, they look at that. And the computer does, and the computer then takes, if it's got a good following, it takes it and spreads it out all over, so we get to be seen by more people during the show. So if you could do that for me, I'd appreciate it. Just like chatting in the chat room, we got some people in the chat room already. Yeah, well, that helps with that FYP as well. Okay, all right, down to business. My guest tonight I met after she had been on the show, and we clicked. I brought her on she came onto this show and we clicked. We've turned into really good friends, Maren Muter. It's fun to talk with her. It's fun to have her on, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff tonight. We're going to be talking about UFOs. We're going to be, you name it, we're going to cover it. If you guys have any questions in the chat room that you'd like us to answer, feel free to do that because we are more than open to do so. So it's going to be a fun night, and let me bring her on. She can tell you a little bit about herself, and away we go. Maybe. For some reason, since that last update from Microsoft, my thing doesn't want to click right. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Good afternoon to you. How are you doing?
I'm good.
108, 105 tomorrow? 115.
Yeah, 105.
Yikes.
Anything
dry.
above
At least
85.
it's a dry heat.
Yeah, well, anything above 85 to 90 sucks, okay? So it's all the same. But see, my tree fell, remember? My tree fell on my house in the back. I don't have a big tree back there anymore.
Oh, so you're direct sun.
It's like walking into hell.
Yeah.
So I don't go back there. Like, if I don't get my stuff done in the morning, I'm not going out there. I'm done for the day. It's not happening. It is. It's like you open the door, and it's like walking through the gate of hell. When it hits, because there's no shade back there at all.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. See, be happy you're where you're at. You got nice climate in the summer.
Well, yeah, it's a nice climate, except then when we hit like 80 here, it's like you're 115, but then we go outside and it's like this blanket of thick air. And you can't, like, on the West Coast, you go into the shade and you're like, oh, okay, there's some shade. Out here, you go into the shade and you're like, oh, you just want to strip all your clothes off still.
Is there a lot of humidity?
High humidity. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Well, my dad grew up in Cleveland, and so we would go there in the summers and stuff, and I always thought it was miserable. Yeah. I hated Ohio. Ohio
is an interesting state. When I drive across the country, I always know, like, aside from the sign that says "Welcome to Ohio," but if I miss that sign, I'd be like, "I'm in Ohio." It has its own vibe, and then you leave Ohio, and you're like, "Okay, I'm out of Ohio."
And then what I find interesting, my dad, he hated snow. Once he moved to California, he was anti-snow. And I remember we would go up to Tahoe and stuff, and he would say, "Oh, there's Cleveland snow." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "See how black it is now?" He says, "The first couple of days it comes down, it looks nice, and then it turns black. That's Cleveland snow." So I have this one of those painted Dickens Village things that I've built over the years, and I haven't flocked them in a while. And now my sister laughed the other day, a couple of weeks ago, because I said, "Oh, I got a free flock them," and she goes, "Why?" I said, "Because they all have Cleveland snow on them now."
Interesting.
And she laughed about it. I saw you.
My dad grew up in Ohio too.
Yeah. Oh, did he?
Yeah.
That's cool. See, more in common.
Yep.
The other day when you were having your fireside chat, and your dog came into the room.
Yes.
See, most people are watching you. I watched the dog. And after the dog sat down on the couch, it was fascinated by something off in the distance. I was watching it respond. I didn't want to say anything because the fireside chat was about,
that's okay.
what it was about, so I didn't want to say anything. But that's why I was watching the dog,
Good.
reaction, whatever that was.
She's feeling good that way. No, we have had so much activity going on where she picks it up regularly, but we've had a pretty regular visitor. And so I thought potentially it was my mother. So my mom has not quite passed yet, but it's coming very, very soon. And I went a couple weeks ago to say my goodbyes. But just before that, you can feel her energy in the room and you can feel her around. And I'm thinking that she's been visiting a lot more before, she dies. And sometimes people wonder, how can that happen? But, if she's still alive here, then how is she also able to be in the room with me? And it's because we have to remember that our consciousness doesn't reside inside this body. It's something different. It's just using this body. It's just like it uses plants. So, plants are sentient beings and animals are sentient beings. And even any mineral life is sentient. we just present differently in this understanding, in this consciousness. But the consciousness outside the body is just using these things as observational tools to observe the third dimensional realm, which means that we can be anywhere.
Right.
So, we're not stuck inside a body. And that, that's one way that this works, is because we're not stuck inside this body. We're actually using this body just as the same thing you would be using a magnifying or I guess magnifying glass or something.
I think
Microscope.
that's what, that's when I was a newspaper reporter on the crime beat, that's when that hit me. I remember this big accident on the freeway. And some reporter, not us, had pulled the tarp off the side where this woman's body was in the car. And I remember looking at her, and people were just appalled because, oh, there she is. They got her. People, they're taking pictures of her and all this. And I turned to the guy, the photographer, and I said, but she's not here.
Yeah.
She's no longer in that body. She's moved on. All it is a shell.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it really dawned on me, because I got to sit there and stare at her for like 3 hours, before the coroner came. And that's what, at that point, she was done. She was mangled. She was done. No blood, no nothing, just she hit, and then it was all in her. But people were just really appalled at it because they don't get that. They don't get that this is just a temporary shell.
Yeah. And it's scary. It's scary to think that this is just a temporary shell. So, I think death in general is a very scary topic for a lot of people because they don't want to touch it. We've trained people not to touch death. We've trained people not to, talk about it, embrace it, realize that it's part of life, where we put these blinders on. And it's just actually almost cruel to do this to people, because death is such a natural, beautiful part of this living experience. The end of death can be gruesome, and it can, the death of anything is harsh. So it just is what it is, but it's part of this experience, and then it becomes even better.
Well, I think, that's why my dad always said to have animals here, like dogs. It always had them. So as growing up, I would experience death, to understand it better. And I think that was one of the reasons he did that. I think I remember him saying that. Going along the line of your mother visiting you post-death, pre-death, my mother had a stroke. Didn't want to go to the hospital. She was paranoid about going to the hospital. So I brought her home. But, she fell asleep. And I was sleeping in my little spot out there. I was always sleeping on the couch. It was a habit because I would sleep on the couch in my clothes because my dad would always need to go to the hospital in the middle of the night. So I was always prepared to go. So I was doing the same thing. And I thought I saw my mother come into the room to check on me. And it could have been my aunt, because my aunt looked a lot like her. But I followed her in through the kitchen and around the corner, and then she disappeared. And then my first thought was, oh my God, the death apparition. She died overnight from the stroke. Go back there, she's sleeping away.
Yeah.
But she actually was out of body for a while. Whether she was checking on me or, I don't know what the whole thing was, but she came in to see me.
Yeah. That goes towards a question that we got to talk about.
Yes.
How is this connection or this ethereal realm playing part? I don't remember the exact wording of the question, but we'll wing it.
Okay. Actually,
unless you have it. Do you have it?
Let me call it up.
Okay.
I'm always prepared now in my old age.
All right, hold on. We'll make the music. Da 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 da.
Okay. Here's me answering you. Here it is. Tapping into connections and signs from the souls we have known in this lifetime and the eternal connections. I have a good. I think I know what they're talking about. I think.
Okay.
I have a soulmate.
Okay.
Who is aware of it. And I remember the first time I realized they were my soulmate, because it was one of these things where we gravitated towards each other. It's been like 20 years or like 18 years. And this person was always on the outer fringe, but they were always there. And they found me by my ghost hunting. And we always no matter if we're not doing stuff together or talking to each other, we're always within this big gravitational circle. And so I had to do an investigation with her and at her place, and it hit me. It was really weird. The night before the investigation, and this is, guys, don't take this the wrong way. I'm just saying this is what I saw in my mind's eye while I was sleeping. I saw her standing there, and in my mind's eye, I walked up behind her and did a hug. And I thought, and the weird thing about it was the color of the scene in my mind's eye was like an old timey photograph. It was just that tannish kind of color.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's weird. So I didn't say anything to her the next day. So I'm sitting there talking to her, and it felt like the scene in Twilight when Jacob sees the baby, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, we were together in a past life.
Wow.
And I talked to her about it, and she was real open about it. And so, it's just interesting because then, she knows when I'm upset. I know when she's upset. It's just one of those things. But like I said, we don't gravitate all the time, but we're always like out on the fringe. And then I had a regression done.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out I was this rancher back in the 1800s. She was my wife. And my other best friend was our kid.
Oh, wow.
And they're still gravitating around me. You know what I mean? So, when we talk about that eternal stuff, yeah, we do make connections in the other world. And we're going to keep making them even in this world, right?
Well, I have a different viewpoint on it, but
okay.
That's okay.
That's right with it.
Oh, no. I think the thing is we need to, focus on what resonates with us. Mm-hmm. So, for some people that past lives and shared, lives and soul groups really resonates with them. And then for me, it just doesn't resonate in that way, but I'm not going to naysay it either. So, yeah, for me, every life is whole, total, and complete. And so there's nothing like Maren Muter, even though I make mistakes and whatever it is, and I will never be coming back to this earthbound plane as me, and my soul doesn't recycle to come back down here. Okay. And so that's I just believe that. But I do believe that every living being has a universal code or an energetic code or an ethereal code. And so if we look at this and we say, okay, what would that look like? Well, let's look at DNA really quickly. Okay. So DNA is a code. And the top layer of DNA that we have seen and mostly study will, eye color, genetics, this kind of stuff. And that's the earthbound code. But then we have other sets or sub portions of the DNA. So mitochondrial DNA, for example. And that is a unique code unto itself that helps develop this overarching, this earthbound, the bigger one that we see more often, code. Now, inside that mitochondrial DNA, there's another set of DNA. And that's going to be your ethereal code, which is your unique fingerprint or your unique thumbprint to this life specifically. Okay. So when this body dies, the earthbound DNA is no longer relevant, right? Because the body has died, and the mitochondrial DNA becomes no longer relevant because it doesn't need to do anything ethereally. But now we have this ethereal DNA code. And this ethereal DNA code is what we are learning and we are imprinting upon each other. So I'm imprinting a certain code to you, and you're imprinting a certain code to me, and my dog is imprinting, and the plants are imprinting, or whatever. When the body dies, that imprinting code doesn't go away. So when I want to come over and say hi to Charlotte after I'm dead, you're going to know it's me because of that code. Now, what is your brain going to do? Your brain is going to say, I know that code. And then it's going to have to translate that into something relevant. And it's going to make kind of this image of me in your head. So I'm not really showing up as an apparition as a human being. I'm showing up as an apparition of myself, which is this universal code, this ethereal code. And your brain is taking that and turning it into something that you recognize and that's relevant to you here on this plane.
Okay.
Now, with that said, once we're in that universal plane, the ethereal plane, we can recognize all the other codes that we have come in contact with. So that's why I say we're like music notes and into this grand symphony. And then, that stays, that doesn't go away. Our music note that we have experienced here is whole, total, and complete, and it doesn't go away. That conscious piece stays relevant on the ethereal plane. When we look at past lives, at least how I look at it, is that on this earthbound stage, because our consciousness does not reside inside this human form, our brain is bringing in or finding or filtering relevant information that is to this life experience specifically. So if there's information that's coming across and our brain says, oh, that looks familiar, let's see if it's relevant, and it starts going through this filtration system, all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, okay, it's familiar. And then if it finds out that it's not relevant, it's going to push that memory away. When we do past life regression therapies as an adult, because it's totally different how it presents as children when it's organic, but as adult, when we go into like hypnosis or things like that, there's several things that are happening. One, your brain is processing something and it's stepping into a new scene of all these things, so that you're a farmer and you saw yourself farming and stuff, but you are actually processing something that's relevant to this life experience. It's giving you a different vantage point, a different way to think about something that's happening. And if it was you that saw your friend, and then it was you that saw the other friend, and it wasn't the hypnotherapy guide that told you, oh, you guys were, married and that kind of stuff, you came up with that yourself. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, how is this relationship working? Why is it that I feel such a connection with this person? And I'll get into that in a second also. And so you're saying, okay, well, I'm feeling intimate with this person. And it doesn't necessarily even mean sexually intimacy. It just means that there's something there that's intimate. There's a trusting relationship. So she's my spouse, a trusting relationship. And then we have this other person that has a different, the trust level isn't the same. It doesn't mean you don't trust the person. It just means the trust level is different, and they're more of the friend group, which would make them present as a child. And so that's when we look at past life regression therapies. When someone comes back, we can see kind of what's going on in their life at that time. Now, why do we connect so well with some people and not connect well with other people? And why do we feel like we're drawn to certain people and then maybe not so much other people? And that has to do with our polarity of our body, because our body is an electromagnetic organism, just like anything else. It has this electromagnetic organism. Now, if we're going to do electromagnetics, what do we look at? We look at a magnet. And what does a magnet have? A magnet has polarity. Okay. If we were to meet somebody with mirroring polarity, we're going to get the EBGBs. We're going to repel against them. So I don't know if you've ever met somebody and you're just kind of like, whoa. And then even after you get to meet them, maybe that feeling goes away, because now you guys are learning your polarities are shifting. And now we have a positive and negative that allow for this energy flow to go through you. If it remains negative, negative to negative or positive to positive, you're always going to have your hackles up, because you're going to be like, there's something not right about this connection. It's not working. So you could have had a wonderful positive, negative polarity with this person. They keep coming around. And because they come around, they're kind of circling your friend group or your social status, they start becoming very familiar. And that connection really starts resonating. And then it feels like you've known them your whole life and you have so many wonderful things in common. And stuff like that. And I mean, it's kind of like you and I. We have
Yeah.
great polarity, great energy, and it's not like we set out to plan it. It just showed up that way. So that's kind of my take on it.
Okay.
And, like I said, what resonates with you is true and good for you, and what resonates for me is true and good for me.
It makes sense, though. What you say makes sense. It makes perfect sense. It's logical. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I understand. I
Yeah.
understand completely.
Yeah. When we see past life regression in children, when that plays out, it's usually the parents or the siblings that remember that episode that the child remembered a past life or whatever, because the child's brain says, okay, this actually isn't relevant to this life experience, and it blocks it out, just puts it away. So if you talk to a lot of children that have this as adults, like 15, 20 years later, they're like, I barely remember. I remember only what my parents told me or my siblings have told me about that time frame.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
There
See,
you
I should ask you. I should ask you these questions more often. That's what I get.
Darn it.
Dang it.
So, all right, what else is going on?
You went to Arizona.
I did go to Arizona. Yes,
Did you get up on did you climb the mountain again?
I did. I climbed the mountain
And
again, and we saw more. We saw more UFOs.
right. Okay.
So this time, I drugged my son. Well, I didn't drag him. He liked going there, and I'd screen share pictures of us. But so we went out. We decided to go out at night. There was this really great hike that I thought during the day, I was like, oh man, we go way up into the cavern and canyon, and there's this little pool of water, like natural pool out in the middle of the desert. It's fantastic. I'm like, holy cow, the stars, everything's going to be so great up here. It's a 2-hour trek in. And I'm like, come on, guys. So there's 4 of us that went up. And as I'm hiking up and the sun's going down, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going next to water. We're in the middle of the desert. So who's going to be next to the water is all the snakes.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God. And then not to mention there's a million frogs. And then right when the frogs started coming out, I was like, oh, cool, frogs. And I was like, oh yeah, snakes. So we saw a couple snakes heading back down. When we were finding our spot in the rocks to sit, there was a snake that went down. I was like, oh my gosh, please just don't let us get bit. That was the biggest thing. But we saw a handful of UFOs that night. And it's really amazing to see them because we had night vision goggles on, but like military grade night vision goggles.
Nice.
It is so cool if you've never been outside in the night in the middle of nowhere with night vision goggles. It's unbelievable. You can see so many trillions of stars. I mean, it's incredible. So we put the night vision goggles up and we had the telescope up. So we started watching and we saw a couple satellites and obviously a couple airplanes. But on my phone, I have this app that's a satellite tracker and then airplane tracker. So we can see what's going on. And then we have the constellation finder. So we have all these things going on to make sure that what we're seeing is not supposed to be in this area. So we try to confirm it that way a little bit, but the movement of UFOs is unmistakable because satellites aren't going to be zigzagging, stopping, moving like light speed faster and disappearing and then showing up and breaking into two. And it's just incredible to see these UFOs.
I can understand what you're talking about with the night sky because I know, where I live, a lot of light pollution. So the only stars that are going to get through are the brightest. We got the Big Dipper and Orion and all that, and we can see those. But when I would go up into into Placerville and those kind of areas, and then when we had our house up in Northern California, I couldn't maneuver where I was. Here I had a telescope. I was really good down here figuring out where I was at. You get up there, and it's like you're in some kind of snow globe.
Yeah. That's a good description of it.
Yeah. There's just so many stars. It's like sometimes in certain areas, it feels like you just reach up and just grab one out of the sky.
Yep.
Now, what would you do if just out of a fantasy thinking things. 'Cause I think about these thoughts too. I'm home alone, and they say,
Mhm.
if you wake up in the morning with bruises and all this stuff, you've probably been abducted by aliens. If they took you,
Uh-huh.
what would you do?
Be super happy. I think it would be spectacular. I would love it. Every time I go out there, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I have my bags packed. Beam me up, Scotty.
I can see myself going up and taking notes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it
Just to
would
make
be
sure.
really, really interesting. I think it's such a unique experience, number one. I don't think that they're coming to harm us at all. So, I don't have that where they're coming to do surgery on us or
Hmm.
anything like that. I really don't believe that in any form. If they wanted to do, I mean, coming all the way over here for a person, no. Um, we're not that great. Sharks won't even really eat us. So, and then you're thinking, okay, well, they need different proteins and that kind of stuff, but we
Hmm.
stink at turning food into protein. That's why,
Hmm.
other animals are so good at it. We're just kind of these little scrawny things. So, in comparison to the rest of the animal kingdom. So I really don't think that they're doing that. They've We've been around, they've been around long enough that if they needed to figure out what and who we are, then um, they would keep doing that. I think it's interesting that we see cattle mutilations and other animals that actually can process foods into different proteins. And so we really rarely would see a human mutilation, but we do see cattle mutilation. And we see this, in southern Utah and New Mexico and stuff like that, where you get that.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
easier for them to, let's say, harvest their meals when
Hmm.
there's less population. So
Sure.
it doesn't necessarily mean that there's more UFO activity over
Hmm.
there, because really it's the same
Hmm.
globally. They're going to
Hmm.
follow the night sky.
Hmm.
But for their harvesting, we're looking at that. We look at the ocean, we look at very deep lakes and things like that. So that's if they were harvesting and getting food and whatever else they need for their spacecraft, they're
Hmm.
going to be doing that kind of stuff. But really, people are more of, it would be like us going, okay, I guess we can start eating crickets now.
Right.
You
Right.
need a lot of crickets.
There's people that do that though. There's
There are,
people
but
that
think
actually do.
about, but they're think how many crickets they have to eat.
Yeah.
Ants.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll make it ants. We won't even make it crickets. We have to eat a lot of ants.
Tastes like chicken.
Tastes like chicken.
Tastes like chicken. But if I was ever taken, I would be one of those people that would like them to deal with my health,
Hmm.
fix my heart, fix my back, and send me back.
Yeah,
I'll be good as new. You know,
exactly.
that's every time I hear about somebody getting healed, I'm just like, I'm envious. Why don't they take me?
I know. Come on. That would be great. If I could heal you, I would.
I'm
My
doing okay
son
though.
the other day, a few months ago, he called me. He says, okay, Mom, I know you're not going to believe me, because he really rarely would ever talk about that. He's just saying I'm not going to believe him because it's not something he would normally talk about. But he said, Mom, I went to sleep and I was in one position and I was in one area. And he's not a sleepwalker, nothing.
Mhm.
And he says, I woke up basically, almost under my bed and the covers were somewhere else. And he says, I have 3 dots now on my leg.
Wow.
He says, I think I was abducted by an alien. I said, you lucky dog. You lucky boots. So, and coming from him, that's a rare, rare, rare conversation
Right.
for us to have. So, with this
Right.
particular son.
If they've taken me, I don't know, and I find bruises all the time. But I have a big dog that gets a thrill out of kicking me and stuff. So, so who knows? But it's like, but I do wake up some nights, and after hearing a loud boom, I don't know what it is.
Hmm.
And I'm always like,
Interesting.
whoa, what happened? What was that? Last time that happened, of course, I thought it was paranormal. But that's when the tree had fallen on my house, and I thought, wow, what's going on? And I went back, didn't see it. And I couldn't figure out what it was, and I thought, are the ghosts doing weird stuff to the house now, making booms? But even now, I'll wake up to booming sounds. So I don't know if I'm being taken or what the heck's going on with that. But I always
Yeah.
saw that stuff when I was a kid growing up. I've always seen crafts.
Mm-hmm.
Even driving down the freeway on my way home from work some nights, I could see them, and then they rise straight up through the clouds.
Yep.
You know, and so I've always seen stuff like that. So who knows? Just like when I lost, I don't know if I ever told you about the time I lost time, where I think I might have gone through a time warp.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and I just don't know whether it was aliens or what the heck happened on that.
Mm-hmm.
But it happened, and somebody else was with me at the same time. So who knows?
That's
But I'd
really
be more
neat.
than willing to go if they take me. I'm good. You know,
Yep.
just don't
Yep.
hurt me. I'm good.
Me too. Yeah. I don't think we have anything to fear, but it would be we might feel fearful because we don't know what's going to
Right,
happen. We're like,
right.
okay, yeah, this is really great. You put me back down.
I'm good now. Well, you know what got me growing up was the Betty and Barney Hill story. You know that movie, and the pregnancy test with the needle that was like,
Yeah.
ginormous. Yeah, that got me.
Yeah.
Because I thought if I see a needle like that, it's game over.
Yeah.
So I don't do needles. But yeah, so I'm still waiting. Even as a paranormal investigator, that's the stuff you sit there and you think, okay, I've seen ghosts, I've seen this, I've seen that, I've never seen aliens. That's next on the
Yeah.
hit list.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have aliens walking around with us.
I do
They're
too.
just in costumes,
Yeah, yeah.
to blend in. I do think that. I mean, I think that there's a lot more to this life than meets the eye. That's for
Mhm,
sure. And we see what we want to see
mhm.
for the most
That's
part.
why
We see what we
I
want.
think if they do if the disclosure does happen, people are going to be shocked
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to be your neighbor across the street who's going to come out and shake your hand. That's a hybrid.
Yep.
That's what we're going to find out because they're here. They're among us. Just like that book, The Mojave Incident, which scared the hell out of me. I've been wondering, like you were talking about earlier about ghosts, and how the DNA thing figures. Well, reading that, I don't know if you ever read that book, but reading that book, the after effects of their alien abduction was that they would be lying in bed at night and they would see these aliens come through the walls. The room would get ice cold, just like it does with ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
And then that got me to thinking, well, because of these EVPs we get, because they always sound like they're underwater, they're like way far off,
Mm-hmm.
all these factors. And then it got me to thinking that, well, maybe we're not hunting ghosts. Maybe it's alien species, that we're actually hunting. Because I mean, there's a lot of reports of these holograms. Like they'll put the holograms on, they'll look like Aunt Martha or whatever, just to calm the people down when they take them. So
Mm-hmm.
who knows?
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Now my brain is really thinking.
See. Let's get that brain going. But yeah, I mean, I got to thinking about it, and that's where my philosophy with ghost hunting has changed a little bit, because now I'm looking at that factor as well.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe it is that, because the way she described it was that the room got ice cold every time one would show up, and she'd see him come through the walls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what people report with ghosts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you'll see that when you are looking at really any ethereal phenomena. And we have
Mm-hmm.
to remember that UFOs are also an ethereal phenomena. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go way out over here for a second.
Okay.
Pretend. Pretend, just bear with me here. Pretend that we are in a video game. Okay?
Okay.
Now we're playing in a video game. And we can see what's on the screen before us because what's on the screen before us is relevant information. So our brain is translating all of this energetic code into what we see, into our environment, and trees and
Mm-hmm.
rocks and people. All of a sudden we're like, oh, hey, there's somebody walking down the street over there. Now, the further we go and we look, so we're standing still now and we're trying to look as far to the horizon as we can. Well, our eyes can only see so far. Okay. And because of that, the game hasn't actually pixelated yet. It hasn't developed until we start walking closer or until it becomes relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now go, bear with me here. Imagine that because the earth is what is relevant to us, we don't actually need to see what is obviously on the ethereal plane, but we actually don't even need to see further into this third dimensional realm, meaning all the other planets, stars, dark matter, all of that is not relevant to our life here. Therefore, we're not actually translating the scenes that are playing out. Does life on another planet, is that relevant to our life here on this planet? It is not. So when people are like, well, where is all this life? Where is all this life on another planet? And why don't we see it? Why can't we? Because it's not relevant to our life experience here. It hasn't pixelated yet. Now, when we morph these bodies into space travel-ish kind of bodies, and we start exploring space, all of a sudden we're going to start seeing things that we didn't see before. Because now that environment starts to become relevant. And the reason why it's becoming relevant is we have broken off from our home planet, basically, where everything that we need to survive is here. We don't have to go anywhere else. But we launch ourselves into space, and now we have to find things that are going to be relevant and life-sustaining.
Okay.
So right now we have the space station out there, and the space station is close enough to Earth that it's still connected. It's like that umbilical cord to Earth. But just imagine it as a video game. It hasn't pixelated yet. We're looking up at all of these stars, which is some energy out there. And, we have dark matter, dark energy, all of these other things that are in between. And it just isn't relevant. We don't need to look at it. We need to focus on what's going on here. And nature's just saying, hey, let's focus here. Let's see what we're doing down here, because up there is not life-sustaining for you.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
So now because of that, we have alien spacecraft, or we have alien population that actually can be flying all over the place. And because it's not relevant, we're not seeing it. And if they were to come down here and we have a little green man running around, or like what you're talking about, the story where, all of a sudden they saw them. Why did they see them? Because it was in their house and it became relevant to them, because their brain had to figure out, okay, is this dangerous? Is this something that I'm supposed to be worried about? It's triggering your fight, flight, freeze. And so your brain is translating to whatever it is. And it might be translating into Aunt Betty or whatever it is. It won't look exactly like Aunt Betty. You'll know there's something off. But your brain is going to do that to preserve its sanity. Yes. And I know that sounds funny, but it is. Because if you see something that isn't of Earth, you're going to freak out. Your brain is going to be like, oh my God, hell has just entered my house, because I can't translate this, and it is so freaking scary, and it doesn't make sense. It's going to feel like hell is in your house. They're going to have a different energetic code, just like anything else. But if we look at ethereal studies, usually the temperature drops around that. Now, why is the temperature dropping? Okay, I know this is a trick question. You're like, Maren, I didn't know I was going to do a test. Why does the temperature drop when we have these creatures enter? Because it actually calms us down. So if you're going somewhere and there's a whole bunch of people, if you go to the hospital or wherever, let's say, they want to keep that temperature low because it helps keep people calm. If it becomes too hot, what happens? We get agitated, irritated, and we can't think properly. And so these creatures, let's say it's an alien and they're coming in, they can alter and probably regulate their temperature. And when they know that you're coming in, they will drop that. Or if they're coming into your space, that temperature will drop to help keep you calm, keep the situation under control.
No, it makes sense, because Sylvia Browne, for what it's worth, when I was first starting out doing this, and I was starting to see stuff, I had nowhere to turn, so I would watch her on Montel. I started by her books, and she made it so simply easy to not be scary. And in one of her books, she writes the same thing. Essentially, only she brings God into the factor, saying, God will only show you what you can handle. But it's your brain. It's your brain showing you what it can handle.
That's right.
So it makes perfect sense.
Yep. I promise you, if you can't handle it, you're going to be dead. Just remember that, because your body will shut down.
Absolutely.
If you can't handle it, then you're going to be dead. So there you go. Everything you can handle until you're
That's
dead.
cheery. Thank you. Yeah, that's a cheery thought. Yeah, very cheery thought. So how is your driveway going and all that mess that you had with the storms?
Oh, so working on the driveway right now. I just did like a huge 3 days worth of bonfire burns of giant trees and debris that washed from the storm. So it's drivable. It's like over giant rocks and boulders, and so it's an exciting drive, a mile and a half up the driveway, up the mountain, but it's getting better. And so I'm hoping by the end of this month, the driveway will be, I'll just leave it as is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll start working on the house. I'm hoping to get those repairs done before winter time. And before the retreat that I will be having out here, I'm hoping that the house will be not leaking windows anymore. So otherwise everybody, I'm just gonna be like, okay, we're just going outside and we're gonna have a big fire big enough to warm us up.
There you go.
I've got plenty of fallen trees. We'll just throw them in there.
That's funny. Do you have a 4-wheel drive to get over all that?
I have an all-wheel drive.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I have too. Yeah.
So
Otherwise,
good
it'd be
enough.
really
My
exciting
all-wheel
to try
drive
to
has
drive it.
turned into a 4-wheel drive. And I'm just like, you are now a 4-wheel drive. Saying, what? That's not what I signed up for.
Well, to give you an idea along that line, I've got a Saturn View red line, so it's all-wheel drive. And when I was working up in Placerville, and the roads are like that in some places, I go to have it tuned up and have the guys work on it and do a wheel alignment, and they came out and said, "What did you do to the car?" And I said, "Well, I drove it." And the guy says, "No. What did you do to the car?" And I says, "Well, it's all-wheel drive, isn't it?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I drove it." It took them like 3 hours to retune the all-wheel drive on my vehicle. But they were furious. Yeah, the dealer was furious that I did this at the view. But it's like, you guys
You're like, it's not your car.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your car. If you don't know where I work and the roads I have to drive on, so there, because I was the only one that had 4-wheel drive for a long time up there. So if it snowed or something and somebody got trapped, it was okay, Charlotte, go up and get them, or go cover the story up there,
Yeah.
So the poor car took a beating.
Wow.
But
How long were
that
you a reporter for?
oh my God, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I think about 10, 15 years.
Wow. Cool.
I retired to take care of my mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But
Are you writing a book yet? I mean, I know you are writing a book, right?
I'm just about there. I'm that close now to wrapping it.
Good.
But you have a thing to help with writing books. Oh, you want to read my book?
Yes.
It's an interesting ride because, I saw stuff as a kid
in
my house. And then, you get to that certain age in your life, like in teenage age, where you don't care about that stuff anymore because you're doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of went on the back burner. And then later on in life, I would see, like, I swear I saw an angel in my house twice. And it flew one way and then it flew the other. And it was all white, so I'm assuming it was an angel. Because my neighbors told me that one of the people that had owned the house before, her sister was a nun. And they used to play badminton in my backyard.
Wow.
So I figured, okay, it's got to be something good. And that's how I rationalized it when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, right? It's got to be something good.
Yep.
And then it stopped. And then when I got involved later with the paranormal group, because I started to get into doing video production when I was a reporter. And so actually we came out the same time Ghost Hunters did. We were doing a video show on public access in Woodland.
Oh, wow.
Going to different haunted locations with another paranormal group.
Jeez.
But being around other psychics. Boom. Next thing I know, lights turning on and off in my car. I mean, all this stuff's going on. And then they kind of looked at me and said, well, deal with it. And that's where I got into watching Sylvia Browne on Montel, because it scared me at first. Because I thought, well, hell, I can hear what people are going to say before they say it. It scared the hell out of me. And so that made me feel good about it. And then now, slowly, with my group, I've slid more and more into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's an interesting story to tell because it's like you go from being a believer to kind of like a non-believer, and then back into being a believer after seeing the stuff I've seen
Hmm.
in these different locations. And I've seen a lot. I've been through a
I
lot.
know. That's why I want to read your book.
Like this gal today online was real proud of herself. I'm not going to mention names of where I saw it, but she had been at an auction and found an old Ouija board.
Mm.
And she was all proud of herself. And I thought, good luck with that. Because I come from the back, I come from, even my psychics on my team are like, don't mess with that stuff. Don't mess with that stuff. So, yeah, she was all happy about it. But all I said was, well, good luck. That's all I told her. I wasn't about to get into it or anything. And then someone that I know very well came on and said, sure, you could tell a few stories about those, huh? And I'm like, well, yeah. But, it's not my place to sit there unless they're a client, to sit there and go, oh, no, you don't do that stuff. Don't mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're a client, a direct client.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be, the book should be interesting. I have a psychic on my team who is a nurse, retired nurse, and it was interesting because she had a story about going to get a job and overhearing them after they hired her when she was in the lunchroom, overhearing these two other people talking above, the ones that were above her in rank, saying how if they would have known what she did in her spare time, they wouldn't have hired her.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's kind of like where I start the book. I talk about that and what people think of us as investigators. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like that anymore, but that's how it used to be.
Yep.
How they thought of
What are
us.
you going to name it? There's something strange in your
I
neighborhood?
don't know yet. I haven't figured that out yet. I mean, I got 2 books coming out.
Okay.
I've got that one, and then I have one about taking care of my father
Oh, yes, I do want to read that one. I really
and
do.
the difficulties that I went through and how I handled that. My
Yep.
mother was a cakewalk. My
Yep.
dad, oof,
Yep.
so I gave you a little taste of him
Yeah, at the
at the
fireside.
fireside chat. Yeah,
I
at the
want
fireside
to
chat.
read that book. And I think the interesting thing is I think a lot of people will resonate with that book because it is such an isolating, lonely time in your life that
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you are all alone. And I think that your
Mm-hmm.
book describing and going through what you went through will resonate with so many people. And even if they are just about ready to have to handle this,
Mm-hmm.
they'll know it's almost like having a friend by your side. I know
Mm-hmm.
that sounds silly, but so that's one reason why I really want to read that book is
Well,
because I
yeah, and
think
then without
you'll
realizing
be.
how I mean, I knew it was stressful. The
Mhm.
situation was stressful, but then after he passes away, my mother has a stroke within a few months. I ended up with
Mhm.
congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
It was all that stress.
Yeah.
I come to realize it now. But the only good thing about all that was that he had congestive heart failure for years.
Mhm.
And so when they diagnosed me, I went, okay, just give me the pill, send me home for the weekend, and I'll talk to my doctor, and we'll get with the cardiologist. So I knew what to do. That was the only
Yeah.
saving grace of it all. I knew where I was at, what pills I was taking. But it was so you don't realize how much stress you're under
Mhm.
until after that stress leaves, and then you have all this other stuff going on with your health.
Yeah.
What it causes,
Yeah.
all that back trauma.
It's interesting. At the fireside chat, I wrote this story about Matilda or whatever her name was, but it was my story. And I will say that we don't understand really the significance of these emotional abuse traumas and physical abuse traumas, but really, uh, for example, I really truly growing up, and you can read the book of buried letters and
Oh,
stuff
I
like
liked
that.
it. That was a great book.
Writing those letters was my saving grace. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I'm going to say, because outside of writing those letters, outside of spending time in the woods and being by myself,
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was a horrible person. I mean, I thought
Mm-hmm.
I was such a bad person that I was literally ruining everyone's lives because of the gaslighting and narcissistic behaviors of my younger siblings. And I didn't really realize this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I held on to that until somewhere deep seated inside me, I have felt like I'm actually a nasty, horrible person that is, and I would just work on facts. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I studied um, physics and quantum physics because I want to be able to back up everything that I see. I don't want to just say, okay, this is how I see it. This is how I feel it. I want to be able to back it up. And that's one reason why I did that. Because growing up, I knew what the facts were and I knew what my behavior was and I was writing it down. But then I would, after I write it down, it would be upside down and backwards. And I would be like, I didn't do that. I know I didn't do that. So all the way until just Mother's Day weekend this year, there was a seed stuck inside me that I'm actually a really bad person. And I actually felt so bad interacting with people that sometimes I just wouldn't. I would just not. And it dawned on me when I got that phone call on the Sunday, on Mother's Day, after I'd already returned to Vermont. And I'm like going to be accused of elder abuse to my mother that I did absolutely nothing on. The saving grace, two things. One, I knew my siblings well enough that I recorded both days that I was there from the moment I entered the hospital so I have all of the recordings, everything that was said, everything that was done. And sure enough, it was so freaking twisted that when my sister leaned over into my ear and saying, it really sucks when people don't listen to you, doesn't it? And I'm just sitting there going, oh my God. So that Sunday when I got that phone call saying that I was going to have these charges, I'm thinking, oh my God, I was down in the quarry. I'm building my Mrs. Briggs boarding house, which is this great project that I'm working on. And I put the shovel down. I walked a mile and a half back up to my house. And I went and I just laid in bed. And I thought of this really quickly. So I thought, I'm glad I don't burn bridges. Because, and I'm glad I build them out of chocolate.
She makes the best chocolate, you guys. Go ahead.
Because if I had burnt the bridges with my siblings, it doesn't mean I hung out with them because I didn't. It doesn't mean I talked to them because I didn't. But I don't burn bridges with even people I don't get along with. I build them out of chocolate because rather than burning them down, when they melt, you are left with something. There's something still worthwhile there. And what was worthwhile after seeing this and having just this heartache and my mom with short-term memory, with my sister telling her that I did something horrible to her, I realized the truth. And it took all these years to realize what the truth was. And it was just like, oh, see, it was like finding freedom. It was like I was an elephant that was in this cage for my whole life. Charlotte, for 25 years during my research, I would speak academically, but there's no way I would ever talk to you. There's no way I would ever have gone on to the International Association of Near-Death Studies. There's no way I would have done Gaia. And because I was so afraid of my family. That's how afraid of my family I was. And so I was this elephant, and I would poke my head out periodically the last couple of years, testing the waters to see if it's safe to come out of my cage. But this Mother's Day, it was like they opened the cage door and I could step out. And so for 5 days, I was in a super deep state of meditation. And I felt the grass under my big, giant elephant feet. And all of a sudden, it was like I was free. And it was the most spectacular feeling. So there was something worthwhile. I'm glad I didn't burn that bridge. I'm glad I went there and was pushed right back into that environment that I grew up in. Because even though it took this long, I was able to have that freedom. And I think that if we burn our bridges and we just want everything to be good and we don't want to feel any discomfort, then guess what? We don't actually let things settle, and we don't actually get to find the little golden nugget that is inside every experience, every situation that we ever have.
Absolutely. My sister and my brother backed me a lot. My sister wasn't living here. She lived on the, way up on the coast. My brother was disabled, so it was hard for him to help, but he would help me a lot with my mother. And my sister knew what was going on as far as, where my dad was concerned. She knew how his personality was. But I was here, like you say, alone. I was here alone dealing with it. And after he passed away, there were times, and he would come through when my during like I would have these events, where the psychic would do readings and all this. He would come through to try to talk with me, and there were years where I didn't want to deal with him at all. But now I'm more open to it, so I feel a lot better about myself. Like you say, burn those bridges, even though he's deceased. But now I'm able to deal with him more. I can see him helping me from whatever he's doing, So it has opened up a lot for me to be able to talk about it and feel free from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But my family's always been supportive. I know my sister's one of my biggest supporters on this show, as far as watching and getting the word out and everything. So
That's awesome.
they've been very
Hi,
supportive.
sister.
She's been very supportive, Debbie, about it. So yeah, so she's always been a great supporter of me, even as a kid. So I mean, they knew how my dad was. I mean, it was just there was no question about it, especially when he started to go off. Well, yeah, the book will tell it all, but especially when all that went down.
Yeah.
With it. So yeah, so it's nice to be able, like you say, to have that to not burn that bridge. But I had to get over.
You just need to melt it. Just build it with
what my dad did in order
Yeah.
for me to even accept him in death.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
But things come in their own time for each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're still hesitant or you still have these little things don't fight them. They're just part of you. And I promise at some point in your life, it will all settle out. But that timing, we can't force it. We can't be in charge of it. We just have to embrace who we are and what we have, and then do the best we can. And things will settle. Some way, shape, or form, they will settle.
I agree. I agree. It's always fun to have you on and talk to you. It's always a blast.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. Last minute, too. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. Yeah, I so appreciate it. We'll have to get you on again at some point down the line, but fantastic. Okay. Yeah.
All right. And I'll see you at the next fireside.
What you got going on? What's coming up? Because you mentioned you have.
Oh, gosh. We have a couple workshops starting this month. And the first one is going to start on the 14th, and that's You Can Write. So it's working on getting you writing. So we're not going to do prompts that are leading to nowhere. We're actually going to work on your books, whatever they are. So the prompts are going to work on whether you're at the beginning or the end stages. We'll be able to fine tune those and get you going. And even if you're stuck in the muck, we'll get you through that muck and writing again. Then we have a look at inside consciousness and how consciousness works. And so that's June 15th. And then June 28th, no, I think maybe 24th, something. Hold on. Wait, hold on. Let me see. Where are we? June 23rd. I knew it was around at the end. June 23rd is our fireside. And then the 28th, we're looking at ghosts and goblins and describing different entities that are out there, how they maneuver, and how we can tell them apart, basically.
There we go.
So, but the writing course and the consciousness course are both like 6 weeks. The consciousness is 4 weeks and writing is 6 weeks.
Awesome.
Long.
How can people find you?
Go to my website, marenmuter.com. And I just opened up a new website, which is Ontology Today. So ontology, like the study of ontology. Okay. So ontologytoday.org.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I know it's late for you right now, so
it is. I'm ready for bed, Fred.
Get some rest. Go to bed.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Fun. Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay. All right. Good night, Charlotte.
Good night. Okay, it's always fun to have her on and talk to her. Like she says, something hit it off, so we became friends. Tomorrow we're shifting gears again. We're going to be back at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and we're going to have Nathaniel J. Gillis on with us, and he is a religious demonologist, And so he's got some stories to tell about some of the battles with darkness that he's done. So he's going to be with us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. If my sister's watching, I want to thank her, my brother-in-law. Like I said during the show, they both are staunch supporters of this gig, and that's taken off again. You know, we're having some real good numbers and stuff on this, so I'm real excited, and I'm starting to see changes, and I'm starting to see things that grow. It's just starting to grow by leaps and bounds. So I want to thank everybody that listens, even everybody on the RSS feed, everybody on YouTube, everybody at Facebook, everybody that's listening tonight. I see you guys in the chat room. Can't read your stuff. I'm blind. I'm old. I get glasses tomorrow. But thank you all. Thank you all. And Jerry, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jerry. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys go, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. And if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here. We're just trying to get the word out about our little show, and it's working. The more you share, the more the word gets out, the more we're moving right along. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, for Nathaniel J. Gillis. Have a great evening, everyone.